Alright, so I want to add some Grime into this. In this case, I'm just going to convert my green to Grime, and I will just sort of make it an arbitrary brown color. Great, that's going to look vile. Then I will throw that into layer 3 of the blend material, and clearly we need a blender in here because this looks really crazy right now. So I'm just going to use another curvature node, RedShift curvature, because I feel like, personally, I just don't really like working with the ambient occlusion in RedShift. I think it's a little bit less intuitive for me personally. So I'm going to go and throw that into blend color R, and for some reason I'm being paranoid, and in RedShift sometimes I will go back in and just sort of add this forcibly into the red, green, and blue values. And you can actually, this is actually kind of making a cool effect where it's, we have it, this is basically the same settings more or less we had for the first one with the chrome. So it's actually adding a little bit of dirt over the scratched edges, which actually looks pretty nice. But in this case, we're going to go and just set the mode to be concave. Personally, I've actually never super played with whatever this owl curvature is, but I mean, go ahead, play around with stuff. It might, you know, do something really cool. But now it's adding Grime, the same way basically that we had it in Arnold. That's what I'm looking for, is Arnold. And again, you can play with the radius and stuff. I usually, for RedShift, I feel like this doesn't do as much noticeable difference. So I'm just going to go through and sort of pipe this into another ramp texture to control that. So I'll just do ramp texture. And in this case, again, we're not really using this ramp texture for anything involving UVs. It's basically just being used as like a level control layer in Photoshop. So we don't actually... You can do this even if the UVs make no sense for your object. It's going to have basically the same effect. So we'll push that down and sort of see what that does. Hopefully it's nothing super ridiculous looking. So usually I feel like with the ramps, if you want more of the color, you're going to want to take the white and slide it down. In this case, apparently it wants me to do that very, very aggressively. To actually, there we go. That's an excessive amount of Grime, but let's do it. Alright, so here's our Grime. Let's assume that we want to make this a little bit noisy. I'll grab this different noise texture. Actually, I'm going to grab the same noise texture because I want the solid white and black values. And I will just click on, again, so we want to eat into the white or where the Grime is showing up. So we're just going to pop the noise texture into the white value. And you can see that's done a really nice job of just sort of eating away at that. Interestingly, and I don't know why I find this interesting, but for some reason I do. But it's not gone through and it's not added a bunch of Grime to sort of everywhere. Because again, this is functioning more as like a levels thing. So basically this curvature node is not showing up, like it has no value here, or it's like pure white. So that value, this is just sort of adjusting the existing value, so it's really only looking at sort of this area down here. I'm not really sure if that makes any sense. I am going to refine this a little bit. I just want the edge to be eaten away. I don't want the whole thing to look so splashy. So you can click this little thing and it'll expand this if you need to get a larger, sort of easier to adjust view. So I'm going to push this black a little bit out and see if I can get a little bit of a harder edge in the area down there. And actually that doesn't make sense why I'm doing that. So the black is adjusting where this isn't showing up. So what I'm going to do is go through and actually add in, somewhere in here I need white. I'm just not sure where exactly I need white. So I'm just going to go through, turn that white maybe? Perhaps, and I think I need to actually swap these values so that the white is closer to the inside and this is closer to the outside. A lot of this, that's kind of not completely horrid, sort of. But a lot of this really is just sort of play around and see what does what you need. If something's not inherently intuitive, you will learn something just from sort of hooking things up differently and pressing different buttons. So in this case, I think this is like kind of decent looking in terms of the Grime. For some reason, this reminds me a lot of like some disgusting, dirty, like restaurant diner or something or another. But anywho, so that's pretty much dirt and grime with another ramp node. Yeah, cool. If I have a dust video, I will come back with a dust video. If not, I have no idea how to make dust in RedShift. So, yeah. So I will see you if I see you, basically, is what I'm going for. And for grins, I'm actually just going to render the mushrooms. I'm curious what it looks like. I will say this procedural texturing does tend to... Ooh, God, that's hideous. That is awful looking. Wow. Ew. It's like a candy cane was put through a blender and then just fired out of a cannon at this mushroom. That is awful looking. I will say that a lot of this procedural texturing doesn't necessarily transfer. Like, if you make a procedural texture for this object with these particular curves, it's not going to transfer super well to the mushrooms. You can use a lot of the same textures. You might just need to set up different curvatures or different nodes and just sort of hook up a new texture for that, just to get something a little bit more custom than whatever the heck this is, because this looks atrocious. And then the same thing kind of for this over here. Convenient thing is, this we only have, one RedShift material blender so far. So I guess it just depends a lot on, your personal working preferences and how you prefer working. For some reason, I think the RedShift, I think Arnold is a little bit easier to work with in terms of the nodes themselves. RedShift is a little bit easier to deal with in terms of just texture management in terms of pure quantity. And again, you'll see, like, here's the unsmooth or the unhardened version of this circle if it renders eventually, and that looks pretty different than this guy here. So procedural texturing is dependent on a lot, like, you're doing it for a specific object a lot of times. If you have objects with similar features, if you have a lot of sort of hard lines and then round edges like that, a lot of times these will transfer pretty nicely, but if you have, something super weird and, like, rounded like this, it might not look as nice as you would hope. So anywho, dust if there's dust. If not, you've reached the end of this tutorial series. Congratulations.